Hello, I'm Captain Robert McCullough, and welcome to Police Report, brought to you by the men and women of the Baltimore County Police Department. This program brings you information on crime prevention trends, crime prevention techniques, and information on police department activities and operations. In today's program, we'll be speaking with Ms. April Daugherty, lead animal investigator for the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office. She will discuss the topic of animal cruelty and its impact on the community. Later in the show, we will talk with Officer George Mussini of the Youth and Community Services section. He will be providing us with some crime prevention and personal safety tips that will assist us during the fall and winter seasons. Each year in America, there are thousands, maybe even millions of cases of animal abuse, cruelty, and neglect that occur. Most of these cases are never reported, and of the ones reported, most of them never receive proper follow-up or investigation. With me to discuss the topic of animal cruelty is Ms. April Daugherty of the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office. April, welcome to Police Report.
Thank you so much.
How long have you been a member of the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office?
I started working at the State's Attorney's Office in 2004.
And how long have you been working in the area of animal cruelty and animal abuse?
Shortly after I started, I learned all about animal abuse, and pretty much right around 2005, 2006, I started showing interest in animal law.
And for you on a personal level, why is this so important?
So it's important because we need to be able to not only look into these crimes more seriously, but there's also the link to animal abuse, which is essentially the fact that if someone is willing to commit a crime against an animal, oftentimes it carries on to crimes that are committed against people.
Okay. And as we start to explore this, explain to our viewers the difference between animal cruelty and animal neglect.
So animal cruelty is going to be typically our felony statute. Those are the crimes of killing, maiming, torturing, those sorts of things. The animal neglect statute is our misdemeanor statute, which is the failure to provide, so the lack of omission, where the animal is not being provided water, food, shelter, things of that nature.
Now, tell us some of the things we see in terms of animal cruelty and animal abuse, some of the things that we see in the community, some of the things that our viewers might see but not realize that it might be animal abuse or cruelty.
So animal cruelty, when it is seen, is going to be something that requires an immediate response. So something where someone is kicking a dog repeatedly, or stabbing a dog. We've had cases like that. We've actually had a couple of cases where someone has shot a dog. So cases like that requires immediate response. The other side to that is going to be the animal neglect part, and those are going to be the ones where typically you're going to see a dog outside, chained, unable to reach its doghouse or unable to reach food and water, severely emaciated to the point where when you look at the dog, you're seeing its ribs, you're seeing a lot of bones in its body. So things like that.
Now let's talk about the whole concept of abusing a dog. So for example, a neighbor shooting their neighbor's pet. What usually transpires? What causes those types of situations typically that you see on a case-by-case basis?
So I think it can stem from a number of different things. I think neighbors just fighting over random things, and it's some sort of retaliation. But we also get the domestic violence component of that, where it may not necessarily be the neighbor, but it may be, in retaliation because the spouse didn't do something the way that, the abuser wanted it done. So at that point in time, he's using power to, hit the person or hit the one thing that the spouse loves, and that's the animal, because the animals don't have a voice.
So they essentially use the animal to control the other person in a relationship.
Yes.
Now, in terms of, we talked about animals being left outside. Typically, is there a specific time of year where we see animal neglect where it's much more, or it increases?
So we're coming into the season where, you know, we're probably going to start getting a little bit more calls. It's typically in the very, very hot point of summer where people are leaving their dogs inside of the car. The windows are up, the dogs are panting. They're not able to escape that, you know, particular shelter at that point in time. Mm-hmm. When it gets to the winter time, dogs being left, outside, should have some sort of shelter. And that shelter, you know, needs to have 4 sides. It needs to have proper bedding. You know, it needs to be lifted off the ground. So there's a lot of criteria that needs to be met for an animal to be left outside.
Is there a certain temperature level that people should be bringing their dogs inside from?
It's very discretionary. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, there's certain breeds where, you know, they can hang out outside for longer periods of times than, you know, other maybe short-haired breeds or things like that. So if you see something, you know, it's best to call it in. It's best to make sure that, you know, it's been a lapsed period of time, you know, that you can describe particular characteristics of the animal. You know, it's shivering, it's crying, you know, it's been an hour or 2 hours that the dog's been outside. Maybe even the water, you can see that the water's frozen, so that you know that there's another component of the situation that the dog is being neglected from.
Now, if one of our viewers sees an animal that's being neglected or abused, what should they do?
So in Baltimore County, we actually have a non-emergency number. So if the animal is not, you know, in immediate need of care, you can certainly call 887-2222, or you can call 911, and they will also transfer you to the non-emergency number so that the appropriate agency can respond.
And you also at your office have an email?
Yes, we do. So if you see something, you know, do something, say something, make sure you're getting it in. We have an email. It's BACO-FightsAnimalAbuse@gmail.com. If you feel like you are seeing something and it's maybe not something, you know, that needs immediate attention, you can certainly email us anonymously as well. And we will, you know, look into the situation and see if we can get the appropriate agency to respond.
Now, you know, people tend to be very passionate about animals. You know, we both are dog lovers. So why do people get so passionate about this topic? Talk about the whole concept of the animal being a part of the family.
So today, more than ever, we are seeing animals in pretty much every home. There are very few homes that do not have animals, and there's actually a statistic that a child is more likely to grow up with an animal in the home than a father. So that's a pretty staggering statistic. And when you look at that, you know, people are considering their animals as pets today. You know, you're seeing people where you know, during storms, they won't leave their homes because their animals don't have a spot or a place on the particular buses or whatever that are transporting the people. So it's risen to that level, you know, where we should consider that as well, you know. And like we said before with the domestic violence, they're just as much of a victim because, you know, they don't have a voice. So, you know, people can exert power over them and abuse them and hurt them.
Okay. You talked about, you know, acts of commission and omission. Talk about that a little bit more.
So acts of commission would be, you know, things that we've seen in Baltimore County, you know, shooting a dog, stabbing a dog. You know, we've even had animal neglect rise to the point where we've actually charged torture because, you know, the failure to provide food and water for a dog can cause a very long and very torturous death for that animal. And then the crimes of omission, you know, the failure to provide shelter, food, water, even vet care. You know, we've seen dogs come in. And, you know I leave cats out of the equation sometimes, but I feel like we see a lot more dogs, because the cats, I feel like, aren't as readily seen as dogs are. But, I mean, we've seen dogs that have toenails completely overgrown into the paws of their pads, the pads of their paws. So, you know, that's something that can be described as painful for an animal.
And talk about some of the other animals you've seen in the course of your work in Baltimore County. What have been some of the other animals that have been abused or neglected?
So we certainly get a lot of horses in Baltimore County as well. A lot of horses being neglected. We've had llamas, we've had obviously dogs, we've had a couple of cats. We've had snakes.
Yeah, you had a case, I believe, in
alligator
before, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes. Yeah, we had an alligator that had a very dirty tank. He wasn't able to get out of the water, so hanging in the dirty water for long periods of time, things of that nature.
Now, we do have a copy of a video of an example of like dog fighting and some of the things that actually go on behind the scenes, or almost like an underground type of operation in our society. Let's talk about that video.
Sure.
What are we looking at here?
So this video is courtesy of the Humane Society of the United States. This essentially is, this is not a dog fight. This is dog fighters, in the beginning stages. They're trying to bump their dogs or, get their dogs ready to fight. So again, here you'll see the dogs, they typically latch onto each other. You'll hear in this video, the dog fighter is urging their dog to continue the fight. So, we get to that point of the dogs wanting to do as much as they can for their owners and please them.
So, and you talk about the whole concept of the dogs wanting to please their owner. These dogs will do this until pretty much till death.
Yes, yes, and that is the point of a dog fight. So it's either until they, scratch or, they cross the line and they're no longer able to fight. So that's pretty intense, and it's pretty awful for the animals, because it's not what they, were made to do, or bred to do.
Now, you have an upcoming Animal Abuse Leadership Summit. Tell our viewers about the summit that you're going to be having.
So one of the things that we have tried to do over the past 4 years that our unit has been around is education. We're not only trying to educate police officers and the public, but we are trying to educate the entire community. So our summit is open to everyone. We invite prosecutors, we invite police officers, animal control officers, as well as animal advocates. We put everybody in the same room together. On this particular occasion, we are focusing on the idea, like our theme is social media as well as the media, because it's a huge impact in a lot of our cases, but it's also an impact in our lives, because if it's on Facebook, it's true, right?
Now, tell us, once again, we see this as a problem. Many people might not realize it's a bigger problem as it is. Why should we all care about this problem?
So if you see something, do something. If you see something, say something. It's the concept of the broken window in a neighborhood. If you see that broken window in a neighborhood and you don't do something about it, it could arise to a problem that's way more, troublesome to the community. So, just making sure that you're aware and, saying something if you see something.
And of course, your boss, Scott Schellenberger, has been very supportive of this program and making sure that we deal with this in the proper way. Who have been some of your other partners?
So we have a lot of partners. We have a lot of support. Show Your Soft Side is a huge campaign that has been able to help promote, the idea that only animal abuse is unacceptable. We have support from Baltimore Bully Crew. They do police trainings with us. They specialize in the dog fighting portion of that. I believe they're considered experts in that area. We also work with the National Sheriff's Association. We work with, other smaller groups all around the nation at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As you can see, animal abuse, cruelty, and neglect can become very serious problems in a community. With the help of citizens and community groups, we can work with the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office to eliminate the problem in our region. If you would like to get additional information about animal abuse, please contact the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office by emailing them at bacofightsanimalabuse@gmail.com. We'd like to thank Ms. April Daugherty for being with us again today. Thanks for being here, and we look forward to work with you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Coming up next in our program, we'll speak with Officer George Mussini of the Youth and Community Services section. He will provide us with some crime prevention and personal safety tips to assist us during the fall and winter seasons. But first, this message.